Welcome to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. In this episode, we'll be listening to Reading Picture Books, a session that was presented at Children's Institute 2025 in Portland, Oregon.
I am Claire from Mr. Mops in Berkeley, California.
I'm Casey Robinson from the Silver Unicorn Bookstore in Acton, Massachusetts.
I'm Mac Barnett. I write picture books, but I do not have a bookstore. But I hang out at East Bay Booksellers a lot. Hi, too. Good to see you in another town.
Okay, welcome to Picture Book Club for Grown-Ups. We were going to call it this, but first rule of Picture Book Club is not to talk about it. We actually want everyone to be talking about what we're going to be doing here. And I want to start with Claire, who really instigated this whole concept from the very beginning, and we love it so much. So she's going to sort of go over what it is, where it came from.
Okay, so thank you. I started Picture Book Club for Grown-Ups at the store in January 2024. It's not technically my idea. The idea comes from the editor, Melissa Manlove, who was at Chronicle and is now at Sourcebooks. During lockdown, she ran a Picture Book Club online on Zoom for publishing professionals. So there would be authors and editors and agents and wannabe authors and illustrators. And I attended a few of those, and it was kind of amazing. So I wanted to run it as a public event that was open to customers as well as everybody else. But I felt like I didn't have the academic chops to kind of pull it off. And then I met an picture book author called Monica Wesolowska. She wrote Leo plus Leah and Albert in the Air. So I met her at a social event, and we were talking about, wouldn't it be great if this existed? And she was like, let's do it. So with the help of someone with more academic chops, that being Monica, we started Picture Book Club for Grown-Ups. So what is it? Picture Book Club meets once a month, and it is just an open forum for people, grown-ups, to come and read picture books. We have two rules. The first rule is that you cannot read a picture book that you've worked on. So that stops it from becoming a critique group. That is the biggest rule. In fact, that might be the first rule of Picture Book Club. The second rule is that the book must be intended for children, because obviously there are lots of for small children. So there are lots of graphic novels that people could choose to bring. People could choose to bring readers. We're specifically looking at the picture book format. And here's how it works. We all wear little name tags. There's usually less than 10 of us. I set the amount of people to come on Eventbrite as 15, but I don't think we've ever had 15 people. We all wear name tags. We write our names on the back of the sticker and put it in a jar, because there's never enough time to read more than 4 picture books in an hour. So if you want to read, you've brought your picture book with you, or you've picked something up off the shelf, you put your name in the jar and we pull it out at random. That means that we're not making any decisions about what book we'd rather read. And people bring all sorts of stuff with them. Sometimes it is an author, a picture book author, who wants to share something that has really spoken to them. Sometimes it's an illustrator who's like, why does this work? Sometimes, and these are the ones I like best, it's a parent who is reading aloud a picture book that was really important to their child. And that's one of the times where we really get to use our empathy muscles, because obviously that book is really important to them, even if it is Love You Forever. And we've done it. It worked. We were very good. And obviously we see teachers and we see librarians, and everybody just reads out a picture book and then we talk about it. And we don't necessarily come at it with a lot of intellectual academic background, a lot of it is instinctive, because a lot of reading picture books should be instinctive, I think. And I think that's all oh yeah, there's a couple of questions that we use at the end of the reading. If everyone's sitting there going, what? Because that does sometimes happen when someone's brought a picture book and it's out of left field a little bit. Maybe there was something called the Maggie Bee. Does anyone remember that? It's about a little girl on who pretends that she's on a ship, and she's basically doing domestic chores all day. And it's from, like, I think the 80s or something. And we were all like, okay, so this book is important to the person who brought it because she said that her kid loves it. But it's basically like, it's basically the patriarchy in picture book form. Anyway, so we do ask there's some great questions, and there is a handout called Steps to Create a Picture Book Club for Grown-ups, and it includes some questions at the end that are really good questions to ask. I'm just going to give you a couple of them. Who is the narrative voice, and who are they talking to? What is your favorite illustration in the book, and why? And what surprised you here? So, and that's what we do, and it works.
Can I just follow up again on how do you get people there?
I think one of the good things about starting this with Monica is that she obviously has critique groups and networks that mean that we seeded the group with people that she knew from those groups. So yes, we do see the ordinary customers that we would normally see, that we invite through our normal means of social media and Eventbrite. But having that seeded group of, I mean, we see Annie Barrows every time. She comes every time, and she brings the weirdest stuff, and we love her. Yeah, I mean, it's, I think having that like seed of working with a picture book author in your area is a good place to start.
We're going to read something to you, so bear with us.
Bear with us, and by us, she means me. I want to read to you a quote, though, that I found first, which feels like if we had a mantra for this whole idea of an adult picture book club, this might be it. It's a W.H. Auden quote. There are good books which are only for adults because their comprehension presupposes adult experiences, but there are no good books which are only for children. Okay, I'm going to read you 207 words. And I encourage you to just listen. I dreamed of you, and then you appeared. Together we became amour, love, amour. Resplendent life, you and I. One day we bundled gifts in our backpack and crossed a bridge outstretched like the universe. Adios, corazon. And when we made it to the other side, thirsty, in awe, unable to go back, we became immigrants. Migrantes, you and I. The sky and the land welcomed us in words unlike those of our ancestors. There were so many things we didn't know. Unable to understand and afraid to speak, we made lots of mistakes. You and I became caminantes. Thousands and thousands of steps we took around this land until the day we found a place we had never seen. Suspicious, improbable, unbelievable, surprising, unimaginable. Where we didn't need to speak, we only needed to trust, and we did. Books became our language. Books became our home. Books became our lives. We learned to read, to speak, to write, and make our voices heard. Someday we will become something we haven't even imagined yet. But right now, we are stories. We are two languages. We are Luca We are resilience. We are hope. We are dreamers, sonadores of the world. We are love, amor, love.
And you didn't cry this time. You didn't cry this time.
Surprise. Some of you may have recognized the text. Some of you may have not. And now we want to read it as the complete piece of art that it is. Dreamers, Joji Morales. I dreamed of you, then you appeared. Together we became amor, love, amor, resplendent life, you and I. One day we bundled gifts in our backpack and crossed a bridge outstretched like the universe. Adios, corazon. And when we made it to the other side, thirsty, in awe, unable to go back, we became immigrants. Migrantes, you and I. The sky and the land welcomed us in words unlike those of our ancestors. There were so many things we didn't know, unable to understand and afraid to speak. We made lots of mistakes. You and I became caminantes. Thousands and thousands of steps we took around this land until the day we found a place we had never seen before. Suspicious, improbable, unbelievable, surprising, unimaginable. Where we didn't need to speak, we only needed to trust, and we did. Books became our language. Books became our home. Books became our lives. We learned to read, to speak, to write, and to make our voices heard. Someday we will become something we haven't even yet imagined. But right now, we are stories. We are two languages. We are lucha. We are resilience. We are hope. We are dreamers, soñadores of the world. We are love, amor, love. I'm not going to read the full story here, but there is a full story here as well. And the books that inspired her that she found in the library. And how the book was made. So now we are going to run our own picture book for book clubs, or for adults right here. And as Claire had sort of prepped, if people have nothing to say, which is not an option for this book because there's so much to say, you can go through some things specifically about format, which hopefully will give you some language to do that if you don't have some of the language, and then go into the context, the social sort of significance of some of these images in particular, what comes through in the visuals. Hopefully this was a different experience for you than just hearing the words. Hopefully those visuals gave you something, particularly if you read it again, if you look at some of the details, if you take the time to sit with all of what she has provided, visual metaphors that keep repeating throughout the book. The page turns in particular, I think, are really impactful in this book. So, any thoughts on this one?
What say you, Mac Barnett?
Well, if we're just thinking about text and image, right, and that's what, at a basic level, that's the most dynamic and specific piece of picture book storytelling. It's a story that's told in words and pictures, but the words tell part of the story and the pictures tell the other. And it's only by synthesizing those two things that the reader, which really we mean the kid being read to, is able to understand the story. In this one, really, who is speaking and who they're speaking to, you just get that from the pictures. And then it all turns on a place, right? The library, which again, you only know that it is a library because you're looking at the picture. So if you say that this story is about a mother and child who cross a border into a new place, become immigrants, but then find a home in the library, those characters and that place you only know from the pictures. And yeah, it's remarkable, right? Like the pictures are writing here. They're doing work that if I'm writing a piece of straight prose, it would be my job to describe all those things, to make sure the reader knows that. But when I'm writing a picture book, the more of that you can offload to the pictures, the more involved the kid is. They are leaning in to make sense of the story, to connect those images to the text.
This book is unusual too because it's a memoir. It's Gigi Morales' memoir, and it's mirroring her own experience only having the pictures when she came here to the library. She was only able to tell the stories through the visual. And so there's an amplification, I would say, of what Mac just said, that sort of juicy visual narrative, and sometimes only visual, that you can get that part of the story from this particular. I think this text does it extremely, extremely well. I always like to think about it as alchemy, so like baking. So when you take your words and you put your ingredients in the oven, what you get back is something completely different, and you cannot extract it again, those ingredients. So the words and the pictures there is some kind of fusion that happens. And that fusion is the source of the empowerment for the child reader. They have everything they need in the context of reading picture books. And frankly, that's true of adults too. The picture book is such a powerful format because it's accessible. It's not scary. And so you're almost taken aback sometimes as an adult, I find, especially with, this book makes me cry. I'm impressed with myself that I'm not teary right now. There's so much heart and emotion, and her story is this story. And so you can feel that as a grown-up. You don't even have to understand why. But I think the power of doing something like this in your stores is that you're inviting people to have a connection to books that is maybe not happening yet, right?
Catherine Rundell, who obviously is English and brilliant. Those two go together. She has a brilliant essay called "Why You Should Read Children's Books, Even Though You Are So Old and Wise." Lots of you are nodding. I love that. One of the things she talks about is that reading with children is a dual learning process. So it's, what did she say? It's going to have to paraphrase it. It's helping children to understand and parents to remember.
This book does make me cry, but it also makes me laugh, which this spread may not do that for everyone, but I am from San Francisco, where Gigi wrote this. This is my library. This is the San Francisco Public Library. And this on the right side is a fountain, a public fountain that she apparently was using as a bathtub for her child. So that makes me giggle because, when she says we made lots of mistakes, that to me is like, oh my gosh, this is the BART map. So it has a personal resonance, which may not be true for every reader, but I think that every book will have a reader that has a personal resonance with something.
I just want to say here that your personal resonance with that spread is completely different than mine, because I am an immigrant and I did land in San Francisco, and that BART map is annoying. Where you have to know exactly where Millbrae is, and how many of you know where that is, and also the phone thing. Okay, this is going to sound really weird. When I got here, people don't speak Spanish as a first language in the UK. So that phone call that she's making, where she doesn't understand what someone's saying, that was actually me, because oftentimes if you call somewhere, it starts with, "If you need this in Spanish, please press this number." And I'm like, am I calling the wrong number at immigration? Is this the Spanish? So I know what that feels like. But also, I want to say on this spread, that dual learning thing is here because her kid has got a toy telephone while she's on the telephone. Her kid has got a train. Yeah, you've seen it now, right? When she's looking at the bar map. And obviously, they're both hanging out in there.
And I think everyone, I don't know if you can, I think you can see them. The covers of the books in here. I mean, there's so many layers of sort of cultural and historical resonance. These are the books that she saw when she came to the library. And I do believe that in the back matter, she talks about the fact that Mexico doesn't have libraries. So just the concept of walking into a place where you can take something out of it to your home for free, that opens up a door, that provided her language, was suspicious, improbable, unbelievable, surprising.
Look at her face.
Unimaginable.
And Summer, on that note, that scene actually resonates with me because I'm hearing my mother's story. She just retired from librarianship, but she didn't get into it until way later in her life. But that's where her refuge was. She lost her mother at the age of 14, and that's where she went to find her refuge. And so, I understand, even though I don't understand Yuyi's story, exactly, I can resonate with, this is where my safe place is. This is where I'm finding myself.
And this is exactly what happens in Picture Book Club. This is exactly the kind of oh, this reminds me of. This is another thing from my story. And that's good. That's empathy right there.
I just wanted to point out, we were talking about visual metaphor, like if you're going back to how the pictures themselves have such a significant impact. We find butterflies on this spread. And then there's a butterfly.
There's bats as well.
Where's the butterfly on this spread? I guess they're the little ones in there. One moment. There's a butterfly there on the fountain. The butterfly is following them. There's the butterfly in the library. So, and then we get the coyote, which also begins to follow us.
I think it's a Sholo.
Oh,
because he's got feathers on his back.
Yeah.
I think he's a mythical. Is he the god of the underworld? Does anybody know? I read a picture book about this recently, so obviously now I'm an expert. Sholos are real dogs as well. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
But
I just point out the butterfly too. It's a monarch butterfly, and so they migrate from Mexico up to the Bay Area and back. Sorry about that, everybody. Yeah.
So you can follow the butterfly from page to page. You can follow the visual metaphor that she's providing for us. I love when we begin to get here. So we see the book within the book on the spread. And then she brings out her needle and thread again. And she's beginning to make the book that she then begins to illustrate, which then sort of becomes this book that is her story. Sort of helping us remember, like, oh my gosh, this is a memoir. This is her story. The book we're holding in our hands, the physical book, ends up being the book that she wrote in the story. The meta levels that we get once we add the visuals to it is really what makes the picture book format a media of its own. Mm-hmm. And experiencing that picture book in that way, you don't get it just from the text when you just read the text. So those are the things that we keep looking for in Picture Book Club.
I also think that thing about the actual physical book shows up a couple of times. If we go to the first page where it's got her hand on it, not that one. That one, yeah. Right. So that is a grown-up's hand. It is a left hand. And then on the last page, there is a kid's hand, and it's a right hand. So it's like our hands holding the book, but it's a kid and a grown-up. Once again, it's that dual perspective. That's incredible to me. And the other thing that I wanted to say about the making of the book is full page bleeds. Does everyone know what that means? So everything in this book goes all the way to the edge of the page. Every image fills up every space. There's no spot images that are surrounded by white page. And I think that really comes into its own when she starts making her book, and that book becomes this book, because then you start to see the edge of the page within the page.
And I just want to make sure everyone knows page turn, just as the phrase. This, I think, is like the moment, or the big page turn. Thousands and thousands of steps we took around this land until the day we found, boom, a place we'd never seen before, suspicious and probable. So using the pacing and that moment of, oh my gosh, what is it? What is it? That anticipation and the sort of the big reveal, that the page turn is just like the key to picture books. That is what every illustrator is sort of focused, like, where's the page turn going to be in the production of books? Illustrators will receive, text on a page, and they get to figure out, where is the page turn going to be? They use their expertise as a visual artist to propel the book forward, to make sure the reader keeps turning that page by specifically, intentionally placing a page turn.
Yeah, and I think that there's something to be said about each page turn being a length of time. And I think that this book particularly does that very well. It doesn't always work with every picture book, but it doesn't matter whether it's the time it takes her to walk thousands and thousands of steps, which is a long time, which we get from her footprints. That's one part of the time. And then, or whether it's the instant that she decides to trust the librarian, right? Where she's like reaching across. And that's when the fonts change too. Should we talk about fonts?
Sure. Yes.
Can I ask Mac a question?
Of course.
I'm just curious to hear your perspective on page turns as a writer, because I know that's part of it too, like the process.
Yeah, I think so. Like a spread there, so 2 pages open next to each other is sort of like that's the basic unit of a picture book, and you're moving forward through spreads. And like a spread can be a single image in a single narrative moment. You can break it down, the left-hand page and the right-hand page, into 2 different moments. You can break it down even further into spots and lots of things happening. But when I'm writing, I'm definitely conscious of like, you don't want to build more than can take place in, let's say, if it's a 32-page picture book, you've got 13 spreads about, because the copyright materials and stuff will take some time. So you need about like 13 spreads worth of story. And I do think about writing it in spread length blocks. So in that way, like even in the writing stage, I am thinking about page turns, building page turns into the manuscript. It's certainly a thing I don't think every author does necessarily, and the illustrator can come in and override that and change it and play with it. And that sort of that back and forth and that surprise you get back when you see your own work from an illustrator and you see the way that it changes. That's an exciting part of the process. But it is something that as you're building a text, even you probably need to be building at least 1 page turn in there. Like I bet before, I don't know Gigi's process, so I don't know if she was writing and dummying at the same time here. But I have a feeling that even when she was just conceiving of this in words, if you go back, she knew she was going to build. Oh no, sorry, just until we found. In the ellipses there. Like she knew she was building to that page turn. And it kind of doesn't matter, like, did you know the text or the image was going to be the page turn there? You know that the story needed that there was going to be this change. And I do think that like building toward that rhythm, in a good picture book will start at the manuscript stage for sure.
Rhythm is so important in picture books to me. I've read some that have terrible rhythm and, I find myself trying to make a rhythm, especially sitting in front of the kids. So rhythm is so important because I think it's an emotional thing as well. Like you're feeling what's happening if the rhythm is correct. But if I read a book, like I was reading one and I turned the page and it was some weird surprise. It had no context with the page before it. And so it was jarring, and, I'm sitting here in front of the kids and it was, of course, it was the one story time where I actually forgot to read the book first. So it was really jarring, and I had to kind of like make it up. Oh, well, I guess this is what happened, but rhythm is so important. And being a little bit of a writer myself, I never like to toot my own horn on that one.
Songwriter. She's a songwriter.
Sorry.
You need that rhythm, and kids need that rhythm, and adults need that rhythm because it's helping them flow through the story.
Definitely.
I want to share the jacket. We don't have the jacket here, but let me just share this for a second. So that is, the front cover, but wait, there's more. But wait, there's more. You can see the difference here, but they are different, and there is a reveal, right, when the jacket comes off. What? There is a reveal to the jacket when you take it off. It transitions, and that's definitely something that I'm always looking for. When I'm looking at the full, complete piece of art, the full package that is a picture book, and I think it makes a difference. There's a transformation that happens between the jacket, which is the loose leaf with the flaps, and the case wrap, which actually is what wraps around the hard paper or the boards that make the covers. This one doesn't have super exciting end papers, but I always look at end papers too, because I think that a story should begin from the jacket and the case wrap and the end papers, not just on the first page of a story, because, it's artwork, it's visuals.
When I do school visits with kids, we always talk about, or I always ask them to tell me what they know about a story from the cover. And then from even the end pages, sometimes they can tell, something about setting. Sometimes they can tell something about time of day, all before the story actually starts, technically. And I think just sort of going back to what I said earlier about the accessibility of picture books, you don't have to know anything about how picture books are created, about the academics behind why they work. You and anyone who just wants to read a picture book has everything they need to have a conversation about an experience with a book. And you just have to bring your superpower of curiosity to a conversation. Where do you feel the book? What confuses you about the book? Where did you have a sudden reaction? What was that reaction? Why might that be, right? Those are all, even if you don't know the terms for a book, I think we all have the capacity to do that and to invite those conversations. And isn't that what we're all trying to do?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the great things about Picture Book Club, especially if you seed it with an actual picture book author, is that you might not know all the words and your customers might not know the words, but there's a little bit of discovery there when somebody who is present at Picture Book Club does know all the words and does spot things. That's how I learned about full page bleeds. I mean, I knew what they were doing, I just didn't know what they were called.
Yeah, I think too, like what you're describing, this way of interacting with a picture book, I just also say it is how kids naturally do this in a lot of ways. They are better at this than we are. Yes. They are much better at looking at the pictures. Part of that's just practical. when we're reading out loud, we're so stressed out about getting the words right. But especially that if you haven't had the chance to pre-read and really sit with the pictures, you don't have time to look at the pictures without disrupting the rhythm of the story. Your job is, you're kind of an audience, right? Yes, you are in the room and you are guiding this like journey with a book for a kid or a group of kids, but really you are a collaborator with the author and the illustrator. It is your voice and your face and it is your hand turning the pages. I can make a book with an illustrator, but it will just sit there. That object will sit there until an adult comes and reads this thing out loud. Kids are looking so closely at these pictures. This sense of like their own feelings about the picture book, including those places where like it wasn't working, or they felt confused, or there was a bit of ambiguity that's unresolved. That may even have been deliberate ambiguity that we put in there. Adults don't like acknowledging ambiguity and things we don't know. It's very uncomfortable. It's even worse to do that in front of children. They'll just be like, why did that happen? And their natural sense of their attention to the book, their attention to their own experience of reading the book, and their propensity for asking big questions. Like, I would also just remind everybody that reading a picture book out loud to kids is also joining a book club with them. And that the most important thing you can do is have a conversation with those kids after the book closes and let them talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I do think yes, I want to learn from a child when I'm reading a picture book with them. And sometimes it is hard to sit with that ambiguity because as an adult, I think we are providing some kind of, cultural guidelines and boundaries. And, they'll look at us and wonder why we laughed at a particular spread, or they wonder why we are crying at a particular spread. They're learning, this sort of correct emotional responses to things as along with pronunciation and vocabulary and language. They're learning sort of culture and mores and beliefs at the same time. So what we're conveying when we are reading out loud is as multi-leveled as the combination of text and art in a picture book, I think, whether we know it or not. They're getting so much complex information from us as human beings with the pacing or how we respond or how our voices are sounding as we're reading something. And they're going to get something different, in different regions or from different parents or from different adults. And I think that's, I find that interesting because I don't think there's one exactly right way to read a picture book. Once that piece of art is out in the world, the reader will bring something to it. And I think that's sort of the joy also of Picture Book Club for Adults is that we bring our own adult, knowledge or beliefs or whatever, and share that in a sort of more adult conversation. And it still resonates with those sort of underlying emotions.
And it gives us, as grown-ups, an opportunity to see picture books as works of art. Because yes, I absolutely get what you're saying about reading with children, but if we're talking about grown-ups reading with other grown-ups, that gives us a chance to realize that there are probably half a dozen articles about this picture book. Okay. One of the things I do at Picture Book Club, while the book is being read, especially if it's something I know, I will Google it quickly and check for a bio or if there's any other links that I could point people to, just so that we get a little bit of context. And when I did that for this one, there is a ton written about this book, which is fascinating and has it gives that book a second life, or maybe a third life, the life it had from its creator, like you were talking about, the life it has with a child and a parent, or a child and a grown-up, and the life it has as a work of art.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think that's what I want to say.
One more thing I want to say. As I like to talk with kids about words and power and meaning and intentionality. And the picture book format is a perfect example of those things. Dreamers is 207 words. 207 words. And it took her 8 months of 10-hour days to create the art to go with those 207 words and to bake that book into what it is now. That is a work of art. That is something to behold.
And a lifetime to create the story behind it.
Yeah.
Before I forget, apropos of absolutely nothing, there's an amazing movie documentary called Story and Pictures By.
Do you know that?
Which is amazing. It is by a director who knows nothing about the picture book world, but I think really nailed it. She interviews 3 creators, including Mac Barnett, Christian Robinson, and Jushi Morales. She still is looking for distribution. I do believe that you can organize group screenings of this, and it is exactly this. It is going into the artistry behind the creation of picture books and what that is, that combination of art and pictures. It is well worth, the hour and a half. Story and Pictures By ... And I'm forgetting the director's name right now, but we can look that up. And Claire and I were brainstorming, and we had this great brainstorm, and it was a very sort of anti-fascist act to read picture books out loud. And I forget how we got there, but
I've written it down this morning somehow.
We were going to say that, and then we were going to open it up to questions.
Okay.
So think about your questions.
I was thinking particularly of grown-ups reading picture books, and Picture Book Club being about using and developing critical thinking skills in adults, community building, and practicing empathy. And all of those are inherently anti-fascist, in my opinion. No kings, not where I'm from, and not where I am.
Okay.
And with that, does anyone have any questions?
Hi, I'm wondering about wordless picture books. I use them all the time as an educator, and I have found now that I am in a bookstore. I mean, I read them with my kiddo, but convincing grown-ups that they can read a wordless picture book is a huge task, and there's a lot of pushback against that. So, especially for the booksellers, sorry, Mac, you write words.
I'm sorry too.
Any tips or advice for the beautiful, amazing, spectacular world of wordless or nearly wordless picture books?
Can you take it? I got it.
I mean, I love them. I adore them. I think they're fantastic. I think it's the book for a pre-literate person to read to you.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. I think one of my favorites is Pool. I can't remember who wrote it right now.
Susie Lee?
It's been a couple
Wave.
of years.
Oh, no, Wave.
Wave is by Susie Lee. Yeah, that's a great one.
It's been a couple of years since I've seen it, unfortunately, but Pool. And it's just open interpretation. They can look at the pictures, and that's what kids like to do. I mean, my 3-year-old nephew, I was reading a book to him, and all he was happy with was the frog on every page. It's like croak, so, it's perfectly fine. And it is, I've had a hard time myself with convincing. It's like, but you can still read it. The pictures are still helping you, and they read it to themselves, that, they figure it out.
Yeah, I usually, when I'm hand selling wordless picture books, it's normally because someone said that they are buying something for a bilingual family, because that's all baked in there. whatever language you want to tell that story in is right there. And I also use it for if someone says, whew, this kid, 4 years old, a lot of words, they have a lot of ideas. I'm like, you know what you need? A wordless picture book, because then they can tell you what's going on and they don't feel like there's a prescribed way to be. We did have someone bring a wordless picture book to Picture Book Club once, and it was brilliant. There you go. I'm just going to leave it there.
I would just say, like, in terms of read alouds too, and this is maybe an unpopular opinion, but I have strong feelings about how to read wordless picture books, which is like, shut up when you're reading it. Like, the person who made this book knew it was supposed to be wordless, and it's very hard to stand in front of a kid or a big group of kids and be silent. But that is what that book is supposed to have. And there's, I think, a very generous impulse, like both out of nervousness, but also to make sure everybody's getting the story, to chat and direct a kid's attention to the page and point things out, and basically to start telling a story, to add words to this picture book. And certainly, at least on that first reading, I really strongly believe there's, of course, still you're going to have to manage the pace of the page turns. And you can kind of model with your gaze, and the attention that you're giving to it, to a kid who's like wants to track you in the way you're interacting with this book. But just be quiet and turn those pages. Sometimes I like to have music, and pair a piece of music that goes really well with a wordless book. But yeah, I think that, like, and you have to fight the urge, it's so strong, but to invent a manuscript on the spot that you attach to this book. Just read it through without words. And then, of course, always, like, I think in general, I think, like, showing it, and then on a second read, then you can go in and start to look at the illustrations, pore over them, have those conversations about it. But, like, always lead with the work of art as it was intended to be made. Put the show on, create that emotional attachment to it, that love for it, that experience with an artwork, and then start to, like, get out and figure out how it works.
I also have a question.
Bring it.
So talking about historical context, I keep coming back to the time that we're in. And I'm also thinking about Mustache, Mac.
Mm-hmm.
One of my absolute favorite books that I love reading to adults. And it's tongue in cheek. It's humorous. But contextually now, it's kind of serious. Like, we're dealing with narcissism, like, all on our faces. So can you speak to the intention and now the cultural impact when time has passed? Like, how do you respect the intention of the story, but the gravity of what it means right now? How do you address that in those clubs, or just that? I don't know. Help.
I think it's really meaty for adults to talk about, well, this is what, came out. Well, first you look at the copyright, you see when it was actually published, and you sort of put it into that social context, I think.
And that's what the adult readers in Picture Book Club want to do. Especially seeing as we see a lot of older picture books and we see a lot of picture books from other countries. They want a context. They want to be able to understand what it means.
It's sort of, I think of it as like kind of complete class, right? You're kind of comparing X to Y. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I try and think of kind of modern day comparables. Like, this is how we as a society have changed. I mean, you see that just in, like, there's just fewer words in picture books now than there used to be. There was a time that, picture books originally were there just to kind of moralize, to raise children, to be good children.
That still happens.
Well, I
see those books
around. So I think that's for me, the fun, meaty part of Picture Book for Adults is you get to talk about that history or your personal experience of that book, 40 years ago when you were a child, and how that changes for you now. Okay.
So I'm curious, Typically, picture books run about 32 pages across the board. Sometimes they're a little bit shorter at 28, but we're seeing longer and longer picture books at this time. They're getting close 48, 60. And don't get me wrong, they're beautiful. I love them. But what are your thoughts on the longer picture books?
Thoughts in terms of what?
I guess for reading out loud in story times, it's going to be a bit of a challenge having 60 pages. So I'm just assuming that that's usually not your go-to. But in regards to having a customer come in that perhaps has a reader that would want to read something longer, but maybe isn't in typical picture book age, is that something that you find as a challenge to sell that book, or is it something that you're not really having in your stores?
Do you want to talk about storytelling?
Oh my God, can I just dive in? I'm sorry. I love some old, I think that's what we're talking about. Picture books are not just for children. There's a global, experience of picture books that other countries will still publish fully illustrated books for adults, intended for adults. Please check out Enchanted Lion and what they're doing with picture books right now. So I think that when we say picture book, we can mean a couple different things. We can mean books specifically intended for that, 3, 4, 5, 6-year-old, that pre-reader. And those books are the 28, 32 pages, even less, or sometimes more if you've got the right kid. But I think that the media will be what it needs to be to tell the story the author needs to tell or the illustrator needs to tell. And if that's 60 pages, that's 60 pages. I feel like Press Here is really long, isn't it? Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's what a great 3-year-old book, right? So sometimes it's not about length, but it's about the pacing. If the pacing is fast and that way the length is okay. I don't know. I kind of love it. I think it's juicy. And I really think that kids, once they're reading on their own, should still be reading picture books. You are getting visual literacy. It's to be able to get that visual metaphor, to be able to contain all of these things at once in your brain is really sophisticated. So kids should be reading, adults should be reading picture books. We should be all doing this more, not just that 32 pages is simply because that's what the printer tells us is the easiest way and most efficient way to do a picture book. That is not, that came from kind of the technology, not necessarily how we should be telling stories. So done.
Woo. So kind of piggybacking off of what you just said about we need to have more people reading picture books at different ages. We've been trying to figure out how to, I guess not really how, but we're having more of those reluctant readers in the 7 to 9 range that I'm having conversations more and more with their parents that the kids are gravitating towards the picture books and the parents are like, you have to read a chapter book. And I'm over here like, well, they don't actually. And so is there anything that you can speak to, maybe like talking points or how to talk to those parents? And also thinking through picture book club, is there something to doing a picture book club for middle grade? Question.
I think that's a great idea.
Maybe organized through a school group.
Yeah.
Like maybe you could go to the school and conduct, once a quarter.
I think one of the things about middle grade, I once ran a middle grade book club that was with middle grade books and middle graders. And I thought that it would be really cool if we started each session with reading a picture book aloud that had something to do with the middle. They hate it. They really hated it. So I don't know if that's because they didn't know one another very well and that they'd prepped their novel and they hated to be surprised. I don't know. But I'm just going to chuck that out there. But I mean, I think it is obviously, yes, everybody should be. But I think what Summer said, if it was a group of kids that already knew one another, I think it would help because I think they'd be more willing to chat. Does that make sense?
I
Okay.
think. Oh, go.
Yeah, you go.
I think one way to address it is there's some really good picture book biographies right now that are really pretty sophisticated with some pretty adult subject matter. So that might be a through for the adult, like to answer the parent who's being stupid. I also think, the language in picture books is much more sophisticated than the language in early chapter books. Way more. Early chapter books are a step back. They're basic because kids are just learning to read independently. Picture books, an adult is assumed to be reading. They know the vocabulary. They know the pronunciation. It's vital that we keep reading aloud to kids as they get older so they can learn these words. I mean, if you ever meet someone that pronounces something differently, it's because they're an independent reader. They don't know. They've never heard the word before, right?
Or like an adult read the picture book out loud to them and pronounced it wrong when they did it. That does happen too. No, I think that's right. Like in terms of talking, like what you're talking about really is like a total cultural reevaluation of the picture book, right? That's a big project. It's a project I'm really interested in. I think it's one we need. This is one of our great art forms. Yeah. This is in fact children's literature's great contribution to literature as a whole. This is the art form that kids writers invented for kids. It is beautiful. It is flexible. It is young. We are still figuring out what it can do and how it works. Talking points for it, I think that's a huge one, that the reading level of a picture book is going to be higher than a lot of middle grade. More complicated syntax, more advanced vocabulary. Another one is just to talk about that collaboration of text and image and to say that we're asking kids to synthesize information from two different places. That's what they have to do to talk to other people. That's what they have to do for media literacy, if that's a term that this parent is going to get excited about, right? But we're teaching them to not just trust information from one place, not just look at the words and say that must be true, but to check those words. This is what a kid does every time we read a picture book, to check those words against the observable world in order to form their opinion of the truth. That is being a critical thinker, a good citizen. It is just a way of being in the world. Picture books do that. Prose can do other things. The novel does amazing things, but only a picture book can do that way. There's a lot of great writing being done about picture books right now. Actually, like the New York Times Book Review, like right now in the last 3 years, has been focusing on picture books in a very meaningful way and writing some longer essays about it. I think that there is like sort of respect from those places. Those could be good things to sort of just print out and post in that section. I'm certainly like trying to do what I can from like writing pieces and making things, but like booksellers are on the front line. You are talking to the people who are actually skeptical, who are taking books out of a kid's hand that they are excited to read and saying, that book is for babies, put that back on the shelf, we're going to get you a real book. Like, that is a heartbreaking moment that you see every day. I see it when I visit bookstores. It makes me so sad, but like, I can only do so much from here. It is you, and I would thank you for being in there trying to figure out ways to convince these adults to let kids read the books they want to read. We get in the way so often, and it's very hard work, and it's uncomfortable work. So I thank you for being there in those moments, and just thank you for that question, trying to figure out strategies to just like let these kids read the book they're excited about.
Yes.
We're out of time. We were going to leave you with a parting gift, but you're going to have to do it on your own. 3 things. Galley room and shipping closes at 5. Closing reception and drag story karaoke immediately follows the keynote at 5 p.m. And I invite all of you to go back to your stores or your homes and read this out loud and go through the process that we just went through and see how it may or may not change your whole perspective of that book and picture books, and start this back in your stores.
The complete steps to Adult Picture Book Club is attached to the session description in the app, so you can follow it line by line.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Booked, the bookstore education podcast brought to you by the American Booksellers Association. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app. Additional educational resources can always be found on the ABA site at www.bookweb.org. Happy reading!